Number 10. What If? Since Disney's What If drops in mere weeks, we have to kick off the list with Volume 2, Issue 74, titled What If Mr. Sinister formed the X-Men. In this What If, we find Cyclops and Havoc being raised by Mr. Sinister himself. What a happy, healthy home to grow up in. So Scott was leading this team of what he thought was heroes. The team consisted of himself, Havoc, Sabretooth, Madeline Pryor, and Sauron. So they of course ran into the X-Men, the current team being led by Marvel Girl, who Scott was immediately attracted to, page 15 and 16. Cyclops feels like he's known her his whole life at this point. He feels the connection and it changes his entire outlook on mutants. He only feels warmth and concern with her. But Mr. Sinister said they were traitors. How can this be? Maybe the guy named Mr. Sinister lied to Scott. Number 9. Mr. S. The alternate future of Earth X shows us a world that could go, well, either way. Every human was given superhuman abilities after the Inhumans' Terrigen Mists were released into the atmosphere. So now a team of X-Men just looks like a regular bowling team. They're a team of superheroes in tights in a world where everybody is a superhero. I mean, it just doesn't really look that cool anymore. In this future, Cyclops himself becomes a teacher and leads an entirely new team, because there's of course a handful that ought to be struggling with their new powers, like he once did. Scott led this new team until they were an effective unit, and then 3 years later, Scott and his X-Men team joined Mar-Vell in his journey to collect powerful artifacts to kill Death, and then, build a paradise in what used to be the realm of the dead. When Mar-Vell did kill Death, a new problem came to be. Now nobody on Earth could die. Which sounds pretty good, but it was actually really sad and everyone just got old and sick. So Scott would now communicate with the Phoenix Force, who is in the realm of the dead. Ouija board not included. And before we continue on with this list, if you want to go ahead and give us a thumbs up, that would be awesome. It really does help us out. You're amazing. Now let's get right back into this list. No more wasted time. Number 8. Scotius Summer Isle. Scaling back to the year 1602, the era where if you could do bed mass, you were deemed a witch and then subsequently killed. That era. So superheroes existing back then would surely cause a stir as well. Mutants on this Earth 311 were referred to as witchbreed and were constantly being hunted down. Now when he was first found, his chest was branded with an X. He eventually meets with other heroes, most notably Carlos Javier, who saved his life and then invited him to the school of witchbreed. And no, I don't mean Hogwarts, the other one. Number 7. House of M. Scott Summers from Earth 58163, also known as the House of M reality. We find Scott in a much better predicament when we first see him in House of M issue 2. So this is a reality where Magneto has now lost the war and his daughter Wanda, aka the Scarlet Witch, lost her mind. She couldn't get a grip on her powers or reality for that matter, so Xavier gathers the Avengers and X-Men to figure out a game plan. They get to Genosha to talk to Wanda, but then when they get there, Wanda, Magneto, and Quicksilver are nowhere to be seen. Reality itself has changed. Peter Parker wakes up, and now he's married to Gwen Stacy, who used to be dead, instead of MJ. And then for Scott Summers, well, his life is great in this altered reality. He's happily married to Emma Frost, and they live in a mutant world. Layla Miller came in to break the bad news to Scott that this peaceful family man lifestyle was all Wanda's doing. So Scott was of course on board when it came to getting reality back to normal. Number 6. Scotty Noir. Coming from Earth 90214, the Noir universe, we get a darker take on Cyclops and also more realistic. See, in this universe, Xavier wasn't tapping into the minds of the world's finest, but instead he opened a school that trains sociopaths how to be the best criminals. It's dark and not just in style. I mean, the story alone, Jean Grey's dead body gets washed up onto the shores of Welfare Island, so the X-Men were trying to figure out a murder case. That led to them also discovering the deaths of police officers around the city. Just a grim tale. Now there's no spandex or monologue. Scotty instead wears a suit, a gangster hat, and just a red visor, for the Sin City look. And as for weapons, he carries with him a pair of twin revolvers. A little bit different than our usual 616 Scotty. Number 5. William Rolfson. Making his first appearance in Uncanny X-Force number 13, William Rolfson, better known as Genocide, is the son of Apocalypse and Autumn Rolfson. She was afraid that Apocalypse would see their affair-born son and look at him as a threat. So Autumn decided to hide and raise William by herself. Not a bad plan. During this time, William had grown into his mutant powers, and even had a bat suit to go along with it, and he was only like 15. The suit is designed to trap him and contain his powers. He kind of looks like a skeleton in a Hulkbuster armor. It's kind of neat, like a Mars Attacks alien. He can generate radioactive plasma, which is a nice touch in a fight. Yeah, you want to go? Hope you like plasma, bucko. Bam! It's also as hot as the sun's core, so it's real good. In the Dark Angel saga, when William and his mom are hiding, Archangel found them. At this time, he was Apocalypse's replacement, so he recruited William. Eventually, William's mom caught on what was going on and gave them hell. Archangel reacted by killing her. What a Number 4, Margaret Slade. So as a little girl, she straight up watched Apocalypse himself fight a gang of demons, literally cutting them up. She gave birth to Hamilton Slade, and then after that, her second son, Frederick Slade, who we'll get into a little bit. She's very stern and ruthless, as one would assume, being a descendant of Apocalypse and all. Like, imagine being a child and witnessing Apocalypse being summoned to fight demons. Like, you wouldn't necessarily be the most bubbly of all teenagers after that. I feel like you'd be a bit scarred. She favorited one of her sons a lot more simply because of the fact that he was violent and ruthless as well as her. They both had the bloodlines of Apocalypse. One was just a bit more different, if I can say that. A pretty notable power that Margaret possessed is that she's able to transform the molecules of her hands into a metallic material that she shaped into talons or claws. Kind of like that dude from the Terminator with the metal swords. These are jazz hands. These are gold. I think it's gold, right? These are gold. These are jazz hands. One of the two. Go watch Bring It On. Number 3, Frederick Slade. Born as the second child of Margaret Slade, making his first appearance in X-Men Apocalypse vs. Dracula issue 2, he's in the bloodline of Apocalypse, and he's too cool not to include. Born in the 18th century, his family was part of the main branch of Clan Akaba. So basically, he was a second-born and was physically smaller, so he didn't really get too much attention from his mom. Middle child syndrome, kinda. Pretty mean. She was actually using her time and energy to mold Hamilton Slade. The family was pretty wealthy and spent most of their time in the Alexandria House, aka the cool treehouse meeting place for Clan Akaba. So Frederick, growing up more or less under the radar, that is until Ozymandias came along and saw new potential in him. Ozymandias spent his time watching the members of Clan Akaba as they betray each other and even kill each other just to get closer to Apocalypse. But Frederick Slade? He was a different egg. Ozymandias saw courage, fairness, and compassion inside of Frederick, so he trained him to become the leader of Akaba, and to be donned the title of the Fittest. What a great nickname that would be. Like, oh, Frederick. Oh, you mean Frederick the Fittest? Yeah, I know him. He's my boss. So now he's a descendant of Apocalypse, so he of course has a few tricks up his sleeve. Self-molecular manipulation for starters, which most upper-level members of Clan Akaba possess. Also teleportation. But this one is unique to him. Not only can he teleport himself, but he can also teleport objects or people. It makes a cool blink sound when he teleports too. Gotta love the small details. Number 2, Hamilton Slade. Okay, remember that older brother, Frederick, that I'd mentioned? Yeah, that's Hamilton Slade. He made his first appearance in X-Men Apocalypse vs. Dracula, issue 1. He's a vampire mutant, so no wonder he got all the attention while Frederick sat on the sidelines. He's also got this cool, like, big clan tattoo right on his chest. Dude's not playing around. We meet him in the Victorian era, born into that same wealthy family. He was born inheriting a strong dose of Apocalypse's blood, so naturally, he was destined to become the leader. It's in his blood, literally. He looked at himself as he would Apocalypse. This guy's a born leader. The members of the clan had to take orders from him if they wanted to or not. He ended up dying at the hands of Dracula, which not a bad way to go out, or not go out. Yeah, he became part of the undead after that and returned as a vampire. As if this guy couldn't get any cooler. So Dracula and his new crew, now including Hamilton Slade, attacked Clan Akaba, killing his own mother in the meantime. And then little bro Frederick Slade came in and killed him. Yeah, he teleported his head away from the rest of his body. Nice touch, super gross. And lastly, number 1, Blink, the great granddaughter of Margaret Slade, also known as Clarice Ferguson. Hello, Clarice. Was a main player in the Age of Apocalypse storyline. Making her first debut in Uncanny X-Men issue 317, she was one of the many mutants that were captured by the Phalanx. She's known to be rather tense and panicky because of her given powers. Anybody caught in the Blink wave, which is her teleportation field, would just get shredded. Now I don't mean like get jacked, like they would get shredded apart, their body just poof, gone. She isn't the best at controlling her powers too. And those powers being able to create teleportation warp portals, so she can displace anything and anybody as well, but she also used these portals to throw a weapon back at an enemy. Kinda like in Infinity War during the first New York battle, when Strange and Wong used their portals to throw Ebony Maw's brick darts back at him. It's pretty cool stuff. She joined the mutant nation of Krakoa and battled Nightcrawler, which is a pretty sweet issue.
Number 10, Zombie Dark Phoenix. This version of Jean does have some perks when it comes to power set, but ultimately her downfall is, well, being stuck in the Marvel Zombies universe, where many zombies get taken out by fellow zombie hero Hulk. Here, however, Jean is supposed to possess the Phoenix Force still, which in theory I think should have allowed her to resurrect herself, but maybe that works differently when you get completely punched to smithereens by the Hulk. But I mean literally, she gets punched through the torso, and then the Hulk crushes her head with his fist in Marvel Zombies 2 issue 5. It's quite gratuitous because, well, Marvel Zombies. Still, however, in theory, the zombified version of Jean should have been considered one of the most powerful. And overall, for the zombie heroes, even being defeated by the Hulk, she was considered one of the most powerful, running with the zombie Galacti, aka Power Cosmic Zombies, on Earth 2149 or Earth Z prior to her death. Number 9. Ultimate Jean Grey. Ultimate Jean Grey ended up becoming the leader of Tian, which I think gives her a power boost, but on the other hand, she was not made as powerful as her 616 counterpart when it comes to her abilities, so for that, she gets moved down a peg. While telekinesis was initially Jean's main power set on Earth 616, here in the Ultimate Universe, Jean seemed to primarily be more of a telepath, who also has telekinetic abilities. Jean, as a telepath, can psychically cloak herself or others, but not against stronger telepaths. She can heal trauma or give you trauma by altering your memories. She can give others amnesia too, and use her telepathy to create vivid and realistic illusions. And friends, before we move on to this next spot, if you are loving this list, if you want more lists about Jean Grey, or just more mutant lists in general, because I love doing those, be sure to let us know by giving this video a thumbs up, and maybe share it, maybe give it to a friend you think, needs a little Jean Grey in their day. Number 8. Jean Grey, Earth 18119. Earth 18119 is the reality of Amazing Spider-Man Renew Your Vows. It was destroyed and then incorporated into Doctor Doom's Battle World, and after the destruction of Battle World, was then completely recreated and incorporated into the multiverse by Mr. Fantastic. On this Earth, Jean's power levels are comparable to her main continuity counterpart, but she also has the added strength of being a mother, which probably makes her both a more determined hero and teacher in this reality. On Earth 18119, Jean ended up breaking up with Scott Summers, aka Cyclops, after he lost faith in Professor X's vision, and instead ended up dating and later marrying Wolverine. Together they have a daughter named Kate, whose codename is Shine, and she's super cute. Number 7. Madeline Pryor. A lot of people think of Maddie as being a weaker version of Jean because she's a clone, but I would argue Maddie is either on the same level of Jean or at least has the potential to be at Jean's level or even more powerful. Why? Well, Madeline Pryor might be a clone, but Mr. Sinister also made her using a part of the Phoenix Force, which means that Madeline Pryor is kind of both Jean and the Phoenix Force all in one. She has built-in Phoenix, which you'd think would make her connection just a touch stronger. Madeline, also known as the Goblin Queen, is also well versed in magic, something Jean hasn't really dipped into herself. I'm not saying she's more powerful than Jean Grey every day of the week, I'm just saying the potential for her to be more powerful here and there definitely exists, at least in my opinion. Number 6. Black Queen. This alternate version of Jean Grey comes to us from Earth 39529, which we get to peer into through 1989's What If series in issue 59. This What If asks the question, what if Wolverine led Alpha Flight? The answer? Well, the fate of Jean Grey would end up really dark. Wolverine becomes the leader of the Alpha Flight team due to the fact that the X-Men were unable to rescue him as their rescue team was killed by the Canadian military. Alpha Flight are the ones sent to rescue Jean after she ends up brainwashed by the Hellfire Club and joins them. Unfortunately, upon arrival, Wolverine learns it is too late as this version of Jean has already gone full Dark Phoenix. Logan has no other choice in this reality but to kill her in order to protect everyone else, basically on planet Earth. I don't know about you, but a completely evil Jean Grey who has gone full Dark Phoenix seems pretty powerful to me. I think Logan got lucky by even being able to kill her. Number 5. Nate Grey. Nate Grey is the son of Scott and Jean, who was raised by Forge, who basically became his foster father. Scott and Jean never really knew of their relation to Nate when he was born, as he was created by Mr. Sinister to be the perfect psionic mutant. Sinister created him using the genetic material of both Jean Grey and Scott Summers. Mr. Sinister just has all that genetic material. Nate did end up becoming the perfect psionic mutant and is known for being one of the most powerful mutants around. At one point, he was even seen as being a mutant Jesus, being known for a time by the mantle of the Second Coming. He has been shown using his powers to heal and even resurrect people on occasion, as well as warp reality. He also is believed to be a potential avatar of the Phoenix Force due to his ties to Jean Grey and his immense power. Nate also has a telepathic link to his alternate reality brother, Nathan Summers. Number 4. Mother Ascani. Mother Ascani is Rachel Summers, but from an alternate timeline, although Rachel has been explained in the comics as being unique when it comes to kind of her alternates. She doesn't so much have alternate versions of herself, more that there are like different aspects of herself scattered throughout various realities and time, but Rachel is kind of always Rachel. She's both all there is and then kind of so much more than that. It's confusing, but it's also what makes her cool. This version of Rachel came into her own state of being after she sacrificed herself to save Captain Britain. Becoming lost in the time stream, she ended up in an alternate future in the 37th century where Apocalypse had taken over the planet 100 years prior. She developed the clan Ascani and would be the one to give the order for Sister Ascani to help save the prophesied Messiah referred to as Ascani's son or Dayspring, which would end up being her alternate timeline brother, Nathan Summers. So many alternate timeline siblings. Hard to keep track of all this traveling through time and alternate realities. Number 3. Young Cable. Who is this young kid? I thought Cable was an old grizzled man like we saw in Deadpool 2. If that's what you're thinking, well, you're not wrong. But also, you kinda are wrong. There are in essence sorta 2 Cables, but there's only one Nathan Summers. Sort of. I mean, it's complicated. Basically, young Cable is old Cable, but from his own past. Young Cable, however, killed himself, older Cable, and in essence replaced him in the comics. While he's technically the same character, just from his own past, he's also kind of a very different person as he's at a different stage in his life. In essence, Cable closed his own time loop when he killed himself, which a lot of people hated as they figured, how would Cable not see that coming? And also, they miss old Cable. But of course, all of that confusion was explained. In essence, old Cable knew it was coming, but he also knew because of his past that it kinda had to happen, so yeah. Confusing. Anyways, young Cable is the current main Cable in the Dawn of X line, who is basically a loudmouth, gun-obsessed, cocky kid who loves a good fight, especially if he gets to protect innocent people along the way, or it makes him look badass in front of the ladies. He has dated a bunch of younger mutants already in the comics, but is currently in a relationship with all 5 of the Cuckoos, much to Emma Frost's displeasure. Just watching you, young Cable. Number 2. Rachel Summers. Rachel has got to be one of the most confusing of the Summers children, and I say that fully acknowledging all the confusing stuff that we just talked about, including the stuff with Cable. While there is the version of Rachel Summers that became Mother Ascani, there is also multiple other versions of her besides, especially as her splitting into separate entities is literally a part of sort of Mother Ascani's story. Anyways, this Rachel Summers is from the alternate Earth of 811, and for most people is considered the Rachel Summers, the main one. Here, she was born to Jean and Scott after Jean had bonded with the Phoenix Force and ended up living after having the confrontation with the Shi'ar. Rachel didn't just inherit her mother's extraordinary telepathic and telekinetic powers though, she also inherited the Phoenix Force itself, part of which resided within her, allowing her to use its power whenever she needed. She was friends with Franklin Richards and lived peacefully in her reality until the anti-mutant Senator Kelly was killed. This ended up resulting in pandemonium and public panic, which resulted in the death of her mother and her father, as well as an apocalyptic future where all superhuman beings were essentially captured or killed. Rachel's powers allow her to manipulate time and travel through it, which was kinda how she ended up in the reality of Earth 616. Number 1. Old Cable. Or just Cable really, we can just call him Cable. This was the original Cable, a man who was once baby Christopher, the son of Madeline Pryor and Scott Summers, and then grew up to become Nathan Summers. He was infected with the techno-organic virus by Apocalypse, but was later saved by both his adoptive mother, Jean Grey, and his biological father, Scott Summers, with some help from the Inhumans as well. Jean at this point was kinda also like Nathan's mother, and Madeline was out of the picture, having gone insane and become the Goblin Queen after she learned she was a clone of Jean created by Mr. Sinister. Jean was given memories of raising the baby that basically gave her a natural motherly instinct and attachment to the child, although I don't really know why that was necessary. She could have likely raised this baby as her son without needing those memories, but anyways, yes, Jean was also pretty much his mother. After saving the baby, Cyclops and Jean were faced with a hard decision in order to save the baby's life. They decided to send him with Sister Ascani, and they actually would see him again, in the future and the past, and pretty much all throughout and around their timeline and alternate timelines besides. Adult Nathan Summers, Cable, would also at one point become the one responsible for saving his own father's life.
Coming in as the first entry on our list at number 10, we've got to go with Kuin, the teenage alien clone. During a misadventure that saw Wolverine stranded on a planet at the edge of the cosmos, far away from any other X-Men or Avengers, he found himself coming face to face with a young boy that seemed to share his exact power set, including an adamantium skeleton. Named Kuin, this boy is eventually revealed to have been created by an alien race that worships Wolverine and sees him as a missing link needed to create the ultimate being. Unfortunately, it's also implied that the cloning process was imperfect and that the adamantium attached to Kuin's bones might not be able to grow with the rest of his body, leaving this story just as tragic as it is odd. Coming in at number 9, we have Jimmy Hudson, the son of Ultimate Wolverine. In the Ultimate Marvel Universe, things weren't looking too hot. Magneto had gone off the deep end and murdered a large portion of both the world population and the entirety of the X-Men, even killing Wolverine with a blast powerful enough to rip the adamantium off his bones. Following this universe-changing event, a young boy named Jimmy Hudson was gifted a post-death holographic message from Wolverine revealing himself to be the kid's father. With the same healing factor and claws as his dad, along with the ability to change what substance his claws are actually made of, Jimmy Hudson was an ideal candidate as the X-Men looked to reform after the death of so many members. Coming in at number 8, we've got to go with Torrent. On the alternate world of Earth 9811, the planet was never reverted back from being a patchwork of different realities named Battleworld, and led to many superheroes deciding to settle down on this new plane of existence. Born to Wolverine and Storm, Torrent was a hot-tempered young mutant who possessed both the power to manipulate the weather and heal back from any injury, an incredibly powerful combo that meant she had little to fear when summoning some trademark lightning. Joining a new team of X-Men determined to wipe the robotic Sentinels off their new home, Torrent is definitely a mutant you do not want to mess with. Coming in at number 7, we have Saberclaw. Hailing from Earth 98-2, this son of Wolverine and an unknown woman absolutely hates his father. So much so that it seems to have literally changed him into appearing more reminiscent of Sabretooth than his actual dad. Wearing adamantium sheaths on his bone claws to make them even deadlier, Saberclaw was briefly a member of this universe's Sinister Six before eventually being convinced to put his differences aside with his father and help defend the world from the threat of Galactus and the daughter of Loki. Just another day in the wonderful world of weird comic book family dynamics. Coming in at number 6, we've got to go with Wild Thing. Hailing from the same universe as her half-brother Saberclaw, this daughter of Wolverine and the ninja Elektra has managed to stay on the side of good and become a teenage superhero that would be notable even without famous parents. With increased speed, strength, and the ability to create claws out of pure psychic energy, Wild Thing is an incredibly powerful mutant that showcases the best influences of the X-Men and proves that even when the first generation is ready to retire, there'll always be an angry clawed mutant ready to protect the X-Men name.
Number 5. German Nightcrawler. In Marvel's Excalibur, published in 1989, we meet a version of Nightcrawler from a universe where, in World War II, the German forces were victorious. In this world, Nightcrawler is a member of the super team Lightning Force. He once squared off against the normal Nightcrawler from the Marvel Prime universe, Earth 616, teleporting him around multiple times and then mocking him after he passed out, calling him an inferior specimen. This version of Nightcrawler has longer, sharper nails and a sharp outfit to match. He's even got a sweet pair of shades like any dark version of a character should. Number 4. The Demon. Appearing in X-Men Noir, Mark of Cain, this Nightcrawler is a dark one indeed. Recruited by a German government agency known as Weapon X, he was put to work kidnapping an American spy known as the Mimic in exchange for his freedom. Also known as the Demon, he tends to speak in sermons like a priest and wears a super creepy devil mask to hide his hideous burnt face. Coming from X-Men Noir, it's no surprise that this version of Nightcrawler is so dark. And if you like this list, I definitely recommend checking out X-Men Noir for yourself. And I definitely recommend hitting like on this video. Number 3. Zombie Nightcrawler. First appearing in Marvel Apes Primate Special, this version of Nightcrawler is, well, a zombie. In the Primate Special, there's a whole universe full of hilarious alternate versions of Marvel heroes that are apes, with names like Spider Monkey and the Silverback Surfer. In Volume 1, we see Tony Stark and the Hulk have similar visions in which they see the ape world invaded by zombie versions of Marvel characters, including a crazed looking zombie Nightcrawler seen attacking an ape version of the Scarlet Witch. It's bizarre and it's dark. Number 2. House of M. First appearing in Marvel's House of M event, this Nightcrawler grew up in hiding with his mother Mystique, later becoming a member of S.H.I.E.L.D. in Magneto's mutant-run world. Later, he joins Wolverine's special team known as the Red Guard, and he has a pretty lengthy character arc that sort of mirrors the Prime Universe Nightcrawler in some interesting ways. Regardless, he eventually finds himself banished to the Deadlands and is eventually killed by a group of zombies, meeting a surprisingly dark end. And now, number 1, Banff Dragon. In Marvel's Inferno, released in 2015, we meet what is possibly the darkest version of Nightcrawler yet. His mother was a shape-shifting villain, and his father was a half-demon. Fighting alongside Cyclops and Colossus, Nightcrawler regularly helps a team teleport to the Inferno, also known as Limbo or Battleworld, in efforts to rescue Colossus' sister Illyana. During the 5th of these yearly showdowns, these attempted rescues, Nightcrawler is captured and tortured, and his soul becomes corrupted, turning him into a demon. Specifically, he becomes what Scott Summers refers to as Banff Dragon, or is that an acronym? Anyways, he winds up causing the X-Men to lose ground. Teleporting inside the X-Men's force field, he helps kill Beast and Doctor Strange. This allows a horde of Inferno's demons to enter into Manhattan, and we see Dragon Nightcrawler wandering the streets as the demon horde rampages through the city. Now that is dark.
Number 10. Death. Death for all of them. We will litter the path to Krakoa with bodies of all those who stand against us, for there is an apocalypse coming. Those are the words of the first horseman, Death. First appearing in Powers of X number 4, Death is immortal, obviously. He was sealed away on Arakko with his other fellow horsemen, which I will expand on a little later. His mother, Genesis, along with multiple other mutants, made the island of Arakko their home, even putting towers up to protect them from the threat of demons, led by Annihilation. That unfortunately didn't last very long. The demons ended up destroying the towers and attacked all of the mutants. Desperate to save Arakko, Death sent the Summoner to Earth. And who is a Summoner, you ask? Well, Number 9. The Summoner. The son of War himself, born hundreds of years ago on that same island of Arakko, he was part of a group of mutant wizards who referred to themselves as the Summoners. So, what could they do? Well, they could summon various creatures of Arakko. Bam, just like that. So while all those mutants were being attacked, the Summoner was sent away to the Immenth Dimension. He was sent to find his grandfather and also carried a portion of Arakko with him. His grandfather, being Apocalypse, was needed in order to save Arakko. Not bad at all. Being the grandson of Apocalypse must be nice. My grandparents were cool, but they were never like Immenth Dimension cool. They just liked Werther's originals. His powers are pretty interesting. Like I said, he's able to summon and control every dark beast of Arakko. Demon elementals, you name it. I mean, in one instance, he actually held one of Cable's bombs as it went off, and it didn't even faze the guy. Number 8, Famine. Also an OG member of the Four Horsemen, Famine is the son of Apocalypse, first in his name to serve. Similarly to the Summoner, Famine had also ended up in the Immenth Dimension. So after his mother died to the hands of Immenth's dark god, Annihilation, Famine and his other siblings were approached shortly after the omniversal Majestrix Saturnine, who then asked both sides of the war to participate in the challenge of the 10 swords for victory, and they agreed. Famine is also centuries old, as he is immortal as well. Number 7, Jack Starsmore. Making his debut in X-Men Apocalypse vs. Dracula issue 1, Jack Starsmore was actually born into a lesser house of the clan Akaba. See, part of the Starsmore bloodline, he wasn't treated with too much respect. The person that gave him the hardest time was Hamilton Slade, his cousin, who I'll talk about in 1 minute. He had a pretty unique mutation that made him stand out from the rest. That being, he can breathe fire. Yeah, he's a pyrokinetic who straight up shoots fire out of his mouth. Guy must kill it at parties. Oh, and he can also absorb fire too with his mouth. So if anything lights on fire in your kitchen, maybe you're cooking something and there's a little plume of dust, Jack Starsmore can just suck it up. He was a child when he was deemed a servant to the council and realized he was a small fish in a very big and very overpowered sea. He had to make up for this lost strength, so he would always go above and beyond his duties to make sure everybody around him is happy and safe. We love him. Number 6, Evan Sabinor. Sounds pretty familiar to in Sabinor. Well, that's because he's his clone. Yeah, making his first appearance in Uncanny X-Force issue 7, Evan was created from the blood of a fallen young Apocalypse after he was killed by Phantom X. So once Warren Worthington became the Horseman of Death, Archangel, he actually was on his way to replace Apocalypse. Phantom X used that small bit of blood and combined it with the world being a scientific facility that's the size of his palm. And he made a clone of N-Sabanur. Not a bad secret at all. Phantom X finally revealed the secret project and used the clone Evan, a good guy at heart, and he sent him after Archangel. It worked because while they were fighting, Psylocke was able to come in and attack him with the Seed of Life.
Number 5. Rachel Summers. Let's hop over to Earth 811 for a second to talk about Rachel Summers, aka Prestige, aka Marvel Girl, aka Phoenix. As an alternate reality daughter of Jean Grey and Scott Summers, Rachel inherited some pretty sweet powers. Classified as an Omega level mutant, she is shown to have inherited all of her mother's psionic abilities, with a few extras shown in there for fun. She can manipulate time and is shown incredibly strong empathetic powers that enables her to control, manipulate, and alter the feelings, sensations, and emotions of other sentient beings. Rachel spent quite a while as a brainwashed quote-unquote hound for the authorities, forced to hunt down her fellow mutants before merging with the Phoenix Force, and was then considered the one true Phoenix, as all her abilities and capabilities were maxed out, and the only limit to her power was her own will and imagination. Hopeless might still love all things Jean, but Rachel has definitely proved a more successful host, as they state that adult Jean was definitely the most powerful, but she had her ups and downs, destroying a planet, killing her friends. Rachel, I think, rode that wave just a little bit better. Check out Rachel for yourself, starting with 1981's X-Men number 141. Number 4. Professor X. Already one of the most powerful mutants out there, and definitely one of the best known Marvel characters as well. Now, if you're not familiar with Charles Xavier's abilities, let me give you a quick reminder. He is an alpha level mutant said to possess the most powerful brain in existence. Because of this, he is said to be the world's greatest telepath, possessing vast psionic powers. Now, funnily enough, in one often overlooked X-Men storyline, Charles Xavier briefly wielded some of the Phoenix's power and was known as the Bald Phoenix. He became a member of the Starjammers, a group of space pirates, and was seriously injured pretty early on, slipping into a coma. He was still able to communicate with them telepathically though, and he eventually merged with the consciousness of the team ship to further assist them. His body seemingly dies in the stasis capsule he was kept in, but his consciousness lived on. Fast forward a bit and it is revealed that Falcon is actually the Phoenix Force, which was residing within the body of Excalibur's Rachel Summers at the time. Rachel had the Force drained from her body by Deathbird, and it was placed in a canister that was later transferred over to Charles. Months after that battle, it's revealed that the Phoenix Force completely revives Charles and imbued him with limited Phoenix Force abilities. Now, although he didn't possess the full power, he was still a formidable foe, trust me. I mean, that coupled with his unparalleled telepathic powers would make him one of the most powerful Phoenix hosts the Marvel Universe has ever seen. And considering the somewhat unnerving mental state he's had since founding the mutant nation Krakoa, Xavier could very well turn into Marvel's most dangerous Phoenix as well. Check out this lesser known storyline starting with 1990's X-Men Spotlight 1... Starjammers number 1. Number 3. Wolverine. Logan of Earth 14,412 mirrors his mainstream counterpart's history up to the point where King Loki completely wiped out the humankind to make his brother Thor suffer. Logan ended up dying, but was chosen as the new host of the Phoenix Force, and he began traveling the universe, wiping out celestial bodies to aid the universe as it met its slow death. After encountering a future Loki, Logan was convinced to go back in time and prevent Loki from ever gathering the Infinity Stones, which he gladly did because it gave Logan the opportunity to see his long dead friends one last time. After Wolverine returns to the future, he comes in contact with an old friend, Thor, and then much to Thor's surprise, Logan attacks him pretty much on sight. The two battle it out before eventually putting aside their differences to team up and take down a much bigger threat, Doom. Old Man Phoenix and Thor then face off against Doom, who reduced Logan to nothing but a skeleton with the Spirit of Vengeance's Hellfire, but Logan resurrected and sacrificed himself to transfer the Phoenix Force into Mjolnir, which helped Thor defeat Doom once and for all. Give this Logan story a read for yourself, starting with his first appearance in 2017's Marvel Legacy, number 1. Number 2. The Phoenix 5. During 2012's Avengers vs. X-Men storyline, the Phoenix Force is heading towards Earth, and the Avengers, obviously fearing the almighty entity, made Iron Man and Giant Man prepare a disruptor weapon to kill the Phoenix Force. Although instead of killing it, the blast alters the entity and divides it into 5 fragments, which forcefully bonds with 5 X-Men: Namor, Magic, Colossus, Emma Frost, and Cyclops. While the heroes tried to use this awesome power very gallantly and responsibly, they ended up leaving quite a bit of damage in their wake. Hopeless stated that they tried to do good things, and they ended up losing their minds, causing massive world problems and killing Charles Xavier in the process. Also, adding the fact that it seems the more good you try to achieve with this power, the more likely your efforts will backfire. Namor is the first to lose the fragment after being defeated by the Avengers, with Magic and Colossus pretty close behind after they were tricked into defeating each other. Emma Frost, half of the Phoenix Force, was later stolen by Cyclops to increase his power during the final battle with the Avengers and X-Men, and while Cyclops, yeah, he's a bit of a special case, so let's just focus on him for a bit. He was the last one to fall under the corrupted influence of the Phoenix Force and becomes Dark Phoenix after hosting all 5 fragments. But Jean Grey's essence convinces him to let the Phoenix leave his body as he is attacked by Hope Summers and the Scarlet Witch. He gets the Phoenix Force once again in order to decimate the Children of Tomorrow during the insertion between Earth 616 and Earth 1610, retaining the Phoenix even after the remaining universes crashed together, but eventually lost it one last time when he was killed by Dr. Doom. There's a little bit more to the story, but I will let you check it out for yourself, starting with the first appearance of the Phoenix 5 in 2012's Avengers vs. X-Men, number 5. And finally, number 1, Jean Grey, the most powerful and complete Phoenix Force and host combination around. While not acting as the avatar of the Phoenix Force, Jean is already a force to be reckoned with, as she is an Omega level mutant and one of the most powerful telepaths, telekinetics, and psions out there. Her abilities were suppressed at a young age by Charles Xavier after she connected with her dying friend, Annie Richardson. Jean's telepathy was activated when she was transported into the future where Xavier was dead. As stated by Death, Jean is the favored and true avatar of the Phoenix Force. As its avatar, she can greatly increase her powers by tapping into the life energies of those who haven't been born yet. The Phoenix Force also allows its avatars to manifest additional powers, especially in terms of Jean as its quote-unquote host, house, and self. These powers include interstellar travel, cosmic pyrokinesis, immortality, and existence mastery, which means she is able to control the entirety of existence. Now, as I said before, Jean is the strongest and most complete host of the Phoenix Force, and as such, she is even capable of forcibly ripping it out of another host and forcing its status upon herself. There was even a period of time that the two completely merged together and became the White Phoenix of the Crown, allowing her to access the full capabilities of the Almighty Phoenix. Check out Jean and her story for yourself, starting with her first appearance in 1963's X-Men, number 1.
Number 10, X-Baby. This alternate baby comes to us from the short stories that make up X-Millennial Visions 2000. Here in the story titled Bringing Up Baby, we learn of a son that Jean and Scott both have together in this alternate future. The story shares a conversation the two have, an argument regarding Jean being pregnant. She wants to keep the baby, Scott is contemplating them not having the baby, considering all the problems that then could arise from that. What if something happened? What if he just isn't ready? He's scared, and considering his track record with this kind of situation, I can't say I blame him. Jean keeps pressing though. What if their child has superpowers and can defend themselves? Look at Reed Richards and Sue Storm. They are both heroes and parents. It could work. The next page shows a picture of their son that I guess they agreed to have, who seems to have his father's eyes and his mother's telekinetic powers even as a baby. Their parents look on, slightly amazed and terrified. I feel like raising a super baby would be really hard. Also, where did they get those X-Men brand diapers? Number 9, Summers Twins. The Summers Twins are the children of Emma Frost and Scott Summers. They have a bit of a Cuckoo's vibe to them, but also have darker eyes and freckles than the Cuckoos, resembling Emma a little less and Scott a little more. They have psionic powers which allow them to create solid psionic objects similar to Psylocke's weapons. In the reality of Earth 41001, which they originate from, they are not the only children of Emma and Scott either. Their mother is very protective of both of them, as well as all of her and Scott's children. In this reality, Scott and Emma are actually married. Number 8, Strife. Strife is the evil clone of Cable, who is the biological offspring of Scott Summers and Madeline Pryor. He was created to be a fail-safe child should the young baby Nathan die, succumbing to the techno-organic virus that plagued him. Creating this clone who would grow up to become Strife was the decision of Mother Ascani, who knew of baby Nathan's prophesied importance. Strife was also brought into the world with the same techno-organic virus that plagued his twin, but as Clan Ascani were present for his entire growth cycle, they were able to actually minimize the infection, reducing the risk of it becoming lethal. Both children ended up surviving, but shortly after, Apocalypse busted in and the Ascani were only able to save one of the two babies. The baby they saved was actually the true son of Scott, Nathan Summers. Apocalypse thought he had captured baby Cable, but he'd actually retrieved his clone, Strife, instead. Strife as such was raised by Apocalypse to become his powerful weapon and potentially become the perfect body for Apocalypse to transfer himself into in the future. He was also pretty much raised to be evil, so yeah. Number 7, Megan Summers. Megan Summers is the telepathic daughter of both Scott Summers and Emma Frost. She is from the reality of Earth 41001, where they are married. She is the older sister to the Summers twins we talked about earlier, and her youngest sibling Alex, named after the deceased Uncle Alex, aka Havoc. She also studied at the Xavier Institute and was training to become a hero like her parents before her. Number 6, Ruby Summers. Ruby Summers is the daughter of Scott Summers and Emma Frost. Chaos, and comes from the alternate reality that is also the home reality of Bishop, Earth 1191. Ruby ended up being named by Layla Miller herself, who suggested the name to both her parents. Her mother in this reality is dead, but Scott is still alive, although he is part cyborg in this alternate future reality. Ruby also becomes motivated by Layla to continue the dream of the X-Men and fight for mutant freedom. Her powers are similar to her father's, but she has full control over her optic blasts. She can shapeshift into her Ruby form, which is similar to her mother's Diamond form, and while in this form she does not age, nor does she require food or water to survive.
Number 5. Days of Future Past. Wolverine in the Days of Future Past storyline comes from a future world that has become apocalyptic because of the Sentinels, which basically eradicated mutants by the thousands and ended up enslaving the planet, both mutant and humankind alike. Now Wolverine, who in this future is older and by extension more experienced, is a more powerful version of his 616 counterpart. He still has all the powers of the regular Wolverine, but he just works a lot smarter. Unfortunately, he still ends up passing when a Sentinel destroys him, leaving only his adamantium skeleton behind. But thanks to comics being comics, this version is revived and appears again much later on in Earth X, standing in for this Earth's Wolverine, who had finally married and settled down with Jean Grey, which I think makes him more powerful, but he also really settled, grew a rather large gut, and seems to have completely distanced himself from his former self. Jean also abandons her former life and is now an out-of-shape housewife chasing after their kids and resenting her choice to marry Logan. So yes, Days of Future Past Logan was needed here for sure. Number 4. Old Man Logan. In the alternate universe where we are introduced to Old Man Logan and Old Man Hawkeye, everything is in shambles. It's an apocalyptic wasteland, and all because the villains, under the leadership of the Red Skull, had coordinated a massive attack on the world's superheroes, leaving only a very few alive. Logan himself was tricked into wiping out every single member of the X-Men, and while that is tragic, I do have to say that's incredibly impressive. Like, damn. Impressive or not, it drove Logan mad with grief and he vowed to become a pacifist. He retired to a quiet farming family life, letting the world go to hell around him, but we need a story, so that can't fly. Eventually, being short on money and needing to help his family, he joins Hawkeye on an adventure across America to deliver a briefcase of super soldier serum. After he goes on this grand adventure, defeats the Red Skull, and returns home, the Hulk gang has decimated his family. This is when he finally pops his claws for the first time since the story began, and ooh, it's satisfying. He wipes out the entire gang and eviscerates the Hulk himself, and then eventually finds his way to the main Marvel universe. Another version of him even gets the powers of Venom as well. So cool. Number 3. Weapon Omega. After the Mutant Legion went back in time and accidentally took the life of his pops, Xavier, Apocalypse came out of hibernation 10 years too early and took over control of the United States. Enter the Age of Apocalypse storyline. The Logan of Age of Apocalypse is extremely ferocious and he goes by the name Weapon X. He has only one hand after having it blasted off by Cyclops, but his claws still pop through the nub, which is kind of alarming. He and Jean Grey set off apart from the X-Men to save mutants and stop Apocalypse, but Weapon X eventually becomes the new Apocalypse, gaining his celestial and mutant powers to try and stop aliens from destroying the population of Earth. Yes, it's nuts, but I suggest you check out this story because it's super cool. Number 2. General James Howlett. In the second volume of Extreme X-Men, joining a team of multi-dimensional mutants that hunt down evil Xaviers across many dimensions is a much different version of Wolverine. Hailing from the reality of Earth 12025, this version of our feral mutant is the Governor General of the Dominion of Canada and Viceroy of Her Majesty's Expedition to Shangri-La. He is like a version of Wolverine who is also mixed with President Theodore Roosevelt but still Canadian. General James Howlett is an adventurer and hero alongside his partner and lover, the demigod Hercules, or Heracles if you prefer and want to get smarmy in the comments. These two shared a love that was built after years and years of working together, and their bond was so strong that Herc gave James a super cool upgrade in the form of a skeleton made of adamantine, which is a godly golden metal even stronger than adamantium, making Wolverine completely indestructible and immune to telepathic attacks. Unfortunately, due to the god-on-mortal nature of the relationship, the Greek gods banish the pair to Tartarus, where they fight hordes and hordes of lost and damned souls for like 4 years. His penchant for big booms and affinity for political service make him a fun take on this character, and the beard? Oh, It's classic. And in at number 1 is Phoenix Logan. The Phoenix Force embodies life in the Marvel Universe. It is incredibly powerful, and when it chooses a host, that being becomes a force to be reckoned with, which is funny how it always seems to happen to characters who are already pretty damn unstoppable by themselves. Old Man Phoenix is an alternate reality version of Wolverine from Earth 14112, which features a story that is actually revolved around Old King Thor. Now, Wolverine's past resembles his Earth 616 counterpart, but it's a little different, because after Loki destroyed everyone on Earth, including Wolverine, the Phoenix Force chose Wolverine as its avatar, resurrected him, and granted him its powers. So what we have here is Wolverine's regenerative healing factor, retractable adamantium claws, and enhanced senses combined with the Phoenix's psionic powers, cosmic pyrokinesis, and flight. These factors come together to make him one of the most powerful entities in his universe, even more powerful than Old King Thor himself.
Number 10. Azure Nightcrawler. In Marvel's mangaverse, X-Men, we meet Azure Nightcrawler. In this world, he's a mutant criminal affiliated with the Azure, a team of blue-skinned evil mutants including Beast and Mystique. This version of Nightcrawler is even more demon-like than usual and wears some intimidating red ninja armor. He battles against Wolverine and Moonstar, confronting them while they're searching for Rogue. Surprisingly, he holds his own well against them until Cyclops arrives. He's eventually defeated at the hands of Wolverine, who brutally cuts off his tail and later impales Nightcrawler's head with his claws. Number 9. Prisoner Nightcrawler. In Ruins Volume 1, published in 1995, we follow the story of reporter Philip Sheldon, infected with a virus, as he travels around a horribly warped and twisted world, interviewing heroes and famous figures and trying to figure out what went wrong in this universe. During the story, Sheldon visits a special prison containing several heroes, including some of the X-Men, with Wilson Fisk acting as the prison warden. The prisoners are deformed and tortured from their captors' efforts to control their powers, and in one of the prison cells, we see Kurt Wagner, aka Nightcrawler, reduced to a frail gray creature covered in filth. We see him locked away and cannibalizing his own tail. Pretty dark. Number 8. Alpha Nightcrawler. First appearing in X-Men Alpha number 1 in 1995, this version of Nightcrawler had a traumatic experience that caused him to despise religion, unlike his counterpart from the Prime Marvel universe. Professor X dies in this universe, and Nightcrawler joins Magneto's X-Men to stop Apocalypse from dominating the world. This version of Nightcrawler has some pretty dark moments, including killing Deadpool by teleporting his head off and nearly taking down Wolverine in a one-on-one showdown. Eventually, he meets a real hero's death, sacrificing himself to imprison the exterminators in another universe. Number 7. Dark Crawler. In Incredible Hulk number 126 from 1970, we meet Nightcrawler, Chunky Edition. Darkcrawler is an ancient enemy of the Undying Ones, demons who ruled the Earth thousands of years ago. They once sent the Hulk after him, and in the battle that followed, Darkcrawler's big scepter was broken, and he was pulled into the Undying One's dimension. There, he defeated the Undying Ones and their leader, the Nameless One. Nightcrawler then became their new leader and earned the title Darkcrawler. His deadly scepter of shadow and creepy red eyes make him a sinister dark counterpart to Nightcrawler, landing at number 7 on our list. Number 6. Egyptia. This version of Nightcrawler, found in Secret Wars Journal number 1, was part of a plot to overthrow the Barris Khonshu of Egyptia. This Nightcrawler is almost ape-like, like an Egyptian monkey samurai version of Nightcrawler. During the showdown, Spectre, aka Moon Knight, shows up and warns the rebels that the Baroness is indeed a goddess and her curfew exists for their own good. Spectre then transforms as a pack of man-wolves appear and charge the heroes, killing this super cool version of Nightcrawler. He's kind of like a side character in this story.
Coming in at number 5, we have the villainous Raze Darkholm. Hailing from a dark alternate future where Wolverine and Mystique had a son, Raze is an even more powerful shapeshifter than his mother, with all of the bloodlust and rage of his father unleashed. Traveling to the main Marvel timeline and impersonating Kitty Pryde in order to get close enough to strike at his father, Raze planned to wipe out humanity in this reality in order to create a safe haven across the multiverse for all of mutant kind, and was willing to do anything and impersonate anyone to achieve it. Coming in at number 4, we've got to go with something a little more live action than the rest of these comic books, with X-24 from the movie Logan. An allegedly perfect clone of Wolverine, but with none of the compassion or humanity, X-24 was treated like an attack dog, and followed the orders of Xander Rice to hunt down and capture the real Wolverine and the young mutant girl he was protecting. Based on Wolverine during his prime years, he was able to physically overcome the true Wolverine, and was only able to be defeated by a bullet made of pure adamantium to the back of the head. Talk about overkill. Coming in at number 3, we have Hulk Jr. And no, I promise this didn't suddenly become a list about Bruce Banner's kids. In the alternate future that's often seen in stories involving Old Man Logan, Hulk Jr. is the last surviving grandson of Bruce Banner, and the last member of the infamous and cannibalistic Hulk gang. Following their defeat by Wolverine, Logan decided to raise this young gamma-mutated child as a member of his own family. So, while the two might not be biologically related, Hulk Jr. grew into a heroic figure because of how he was raised, and would go on to start a new generation of heroes on this post-apocalyptic world, bringing some hope to a land filled with tragedy. Coming in at number 2, we have Laura Kinney, aka X-23. Created by the Weapon X project when they were attempting to remake the success of Wolverine with a genetic sample that had a damaged Y chromosome, Laura is otherwise a perfect clone of Logan in every way. While her early years were traumatic and occasionally brought her into conflict with Wolverine and the X-Men, in recent years she's actually taken up the name of Wolverine herself, living up to the title that's inspired mutants for generations and helping carve out a new place for mutant kind in a new world. And finally, coming in at number 1, we have Daken, the dark son of Wolverine. Named after the Japanese term for mongrel dog or bastard, Daken is the tragic child that Wolverine never knew about, his mother being murdered before Wolverine even knew he had a son. Cut from his mother's body, Daken was raised to hate his father, and in their very first encounter slashed open his stomach and left him to bleed to death. With the same incredible healing abilities and bone claws as his dad, Daken has had a long road of trying to find his proper place in the world, and has fought on the sides of both good and evil over the course of his tragic life. In recent years though, Daken does seem to have found some sense of belonging on the island of Krakoa, and has recently become a member of the new X-Factor team. Let's hope he can catch a little bit of a break from his life being so angsty.
Number 10, Madeline Pryor. You might consider having Madeline on this list today cheating since she is a clone of Jean Grey, but I don't care, she deserves to be talked about. Originally the love interest and first wife of X-Men leader Cyclops, Madeline was a frequent member of the X-Men supporting cast until a series of terrible events. You know, her husband leaving, losing her son, and finding out she's actually a clone, which led her down a path of villainy. It's discovered that when Phoenix took her own life, a fragment of the Phoenix Force entered the body of the clone, and that's what gave her life and sentience, which Sinister took as an opportunity to attract Scott so that the two could procreate and make one of the most powerful mutants out there. Since Madeline was cloned from Jean Grey's DNA, she was essentially another version of Jean, and possessed Jean's telekinetic and telepathic abilities, although it's never stated if she was actually classified as an Omega level mutant as well. During the 2012 Avengers vs. X-Men storyline, Mr. Sinister had created a group of 6 Madeline Pryor clones in order to take the Phoenix Force energies from the Phoenix 5, consisting of the Phoenix Force empowered Cyclops, Colossus, Emma Frost, Magik, and Namor. Unlike the original Madeline, none of these 6 clones showed indication of having individual personalities or free will, but instead appeared to follow Sinister completely. The Madeline Pryor clones joined Sinister's other clone creations in fighting the Phoenix 5 and managed to defeat each one. They also were able to siphon some of the energy from the Phoenix Force, but they were all immediately killed by the entity itself. Check her out for yourself, starting with 1983's Uncanny X-Men number 168. Number 9, Stepford Cuckoos. Known as 3-in-1 and then later 4-in-1, 5-in-1, and 1000-in-1, the Stepford Cuckoos are the product of Weapon XIV, or Weapon 14. Meaning they are clones created from the genetic template of Emma Frost that were created for the purpose of killing every mutant on Earth. Thousands of these clones exist dormant, however only 5 were sent to infiltrate the Xavier Institute in order to hone their skills and gain intel. As mutants with powers similar to Emma Frost, the girls have shown that they are capable of telepathy, mind alteration, astral projection, and the infamous organic diamond form that give them psionic immunity immunity, super strength, stamina, and durability. However, what sets them apart from Frost is that the Cuckoos can selectively harden parts of their bodies as needed. During the War Song storyline, an unstable fraction of the Phoenix Force sparked inside the girls, and their dormant weapon plus nanotech inside their bones was activated. This nanotech briefly reanimated Sophie and xmen, who directed their sisters back to the world to activate Sublime's plan for the destruction of the mutant race. The Phoenix and Sublime both wrestled for control of the Cuckoos until the X-Men arrived. Phoebe and Mindy were captured and integrated into Sublime's machine, but the Phoenix was able to possess Celeste. When Celeste was finally merged into the machine, the Phoenix was divided between all the Cuckoos and trapped in their newly emerged second mutation, their organic diamond hearts. Eventually, Celeste was able to take full control of the Phoenix, destroyed her sisters, and trapped the Phoenix fragments inside the 3-in-1's flawless diamond hearts, rendering them all emotionless. Check out these sisters for yourself, starting with their first appearance in 2001's New X-Men number 118. Number 8. Emma Frost, Earth 92,124. Hailing from Earth 92,124, an alternate reality where Amazonia conquered the world very early on, making females the dominant sex across the globe, slowly eliminating the male gene altogether, comes Emma Frost, the hero known as White Phoenix in this reality. This Emma Frost is said to possess all the powers of Emma Frost and the Phoenix Force, which already makes you think she's incredibly strong, and you'd be exactly right. These powers include, but are definitely not limited to, telepathy, mind cloaking, astral projection, mental paralysis, telekinesis, and of course, the organic diamond form that protects her from psychic attacks and also grants her super strength, stamina, and durability. White Phoenix was a member of the Avengers who worked with President Artoom and helped capture the Y-Men leader Hercules. However, all but White Phoenix had grown disillusioned with the president and teamed up with Hercules and Gorgon in confronting her. White Phoenix stayed by the president's side but was held hostage by Wolverine, unfortunately. Give this Emma story a read for yourself in 2009's Incredible Hercules number 124 to number 125. Number 7. Quentin Quire. Also known as Kid Omega, Quentin joined the Xavier Institute after Professor X's return from averting a war with Genosha and the rebuilding of the X-Mansion. Quire is depicted as an Omega-level mutant possessing advanced cognitive and telepathic abilities, which enable him to organize and construct his thoughts at accelerated rates, overtly or covertly manipulate the minds of others, resist mind probes, and disable other forms of psychic manipulation. His level of psychic influence on others depends on the number of people he wants to affect, meaning it's stronger when he focuses on less people, of course. After he was hurt pretty badly and was kept semi-alive in Beast's lab, he was found by the Phoenix Force, and although it didn't accept him as a host, it woke him up from his coma and reconstituted his body. He eventually heads out to find the Phoenix Force, and when he does, he winds up releasing it, asking it to revive Sophie, his love. Sophie refused to come back to life, and the Force left him to wallow in his own self-pity. Fast forward a bit and we see the Phoenix Force allow Quentin to absorb some of its power, which he ends up sacrificing to save Jubilee from dying. Now, although he didn't have it for long and didn't actually have access to the full powers of the Phoenix Force, he was still capable of interstellar travel, pyrokinesis, and of course, resurrection. Check out Quentin's story for yourself, starting with 2003's New X-Men number 134. Number 6. Hope Summers. The first mutant born after the House of M and Decimation storyline. According to Cable, the baby is a messianic figure destined to save both mutant and humankind, and he ends up becoming her adopted father. However, there were some who didn't agree with his decision, as there was a timeline where she kills everyone instead of saving them. Hope is an Omega level mutant with the ability of unspecified limits to psychically manipulate and mimic the powers of other mutants. This is generally shown as a mimicry of the superhuman mutant abilities of those near her. However, she has demonstrated additional powers, like when she was born, when she unleashed a massive psionic pulse that destroyed Cerebro. During the Avengers vs. X-Men storyline, Hope is targeted by the Phoenix Force, and the X-Men want her to accept it because it could revive the dwindling mutant race. The Phoenix Force arrives, and instead of possessing Hope, it possesses and forms the Phoenix 5, and she is taken away to safety. Having learned about a previous Phoenix host who is also trained to become the Iron Fist of her era, Hope visits UT, but UT is unable to help her directly, instead instructing her to learn from Spider-Man based on a vision that he had. Although uncertain if he can teach her, Spider-Man proceeds to tell Hope of his mantra of great power requiring great responsibility, giving her more to think about in her role as the host of the Phoenix Force. He also teaches her about patience, and with these lessons, Hope fights alongside Scarlet Witch against Cyclops, and she not only takes on the full power of the Phoenix and restores the mutant race, but she stops Cyclops in the process. With her destiny fulfilled, she is shown departing Utopia to find a new place for herself. Give her story a read, starting with 2008's X-Men Volume 2, number 205.
Number 5. Summer Scott. AKA Starbolt, Summer comes from Earth 80827. She first appeared in New Exiles issue 9, the Soul Awakening storyline. She dives in during part 3. At just a young age, she was recruited into Emma Frost's X-Force, and the training here is quite brutal. Once her and her fellow X-Force team members meet the Exiles, they get defeated easily. Summer's team just isn't coordinated enough yet. But both teams later on combine their powers when they attack the French. Yeah, they take on a fleet in order to save the Queen. How epic is that? This universe's Bobby Drake, Orion, freezes the water while Starbolt rides a snowmobile towards the ship, of course using her optic blasts. It really doesn't get better than that, folks. I don't know what to tell you. Number 4, Basilisk. Okay, a little less fun than Ski-Doos and the High Seas. We now look to the Age of X timeline where mutants were despised and treated horribly. Scott, now known as Basilisk, first appears in Age of X Alpha issue 1. I made fun of Scott's visor in the Noir universe a little bit with like regular glasses, but here he doesn't even get one. In fact, he doesn't even get eyelids anymore in this universe. He now resides in Alcatraz where the guards control where he looks, when he looks, and who gets executed because of it. He's literally a living weapon. He finally figured out a way to control his mask and then he broke out, freeing all the other mutant prisoners, but that's a long time to not have eyelids. What a horrible, horrible time. He must win the staring contests that all the cellmates do. It's so mean. Sorry, Scott. Number 3, Sheriff Summers. Coming straight from the rootin' tootin' Wild West, Sheriff Summers makes his first ride in the pages of Extreme X-Men Volume 2, Issue 4. Dazzler and the team have to destroy 10 evil versions of Charles Xavier, and they of course have the help of, well, Xavier Head. The team meets the sheriff in the following issue, and he's blasting away on his horse next to Colossus, page 6. It's nice to see him here after what we just talked about. Now he's a sheriff, he's not a prisoner executing mutants. We're on the right path. I'm just kidding, evil Xavier was using him as a pawn. But we're getting better, we're getting better. Number 2, Ray Summers. The Amalgam Universe, so much fun. In the pages of DC Comics back in Smash Comics issue 14, the Ray made his first appearance. There's a link. He was exposed to extreme sunlight and lightning at the same time, and then in turn got these energy powers. So when you combine him with Scott Summers in JLX issue 1, you get the lovely Ray Summers, aka Apollo. While other amalgams are obvious and quite out there, like Super Soldier, Superman, and Captain America, this one's basically just Cyclops with more power. Sunlight makes Ray stronger, although he was raised from mutant-fearing parents that kept him locked inside, telling him the sun will kill him. Kind of like Nick Swardson from the Benchwarmers, for the select few who have seen that. The OG few who've seen that. He can absorb energy from the sun and blast it then out of his eyes. I don't blame the parents for being afraid. That sounds pretty wild. And finally, number 1. Ultimate Cyclops. The 1610 universe, aka the Ultimate Universe, this version of Summers first appeared in Ultimate X-Men issue 1. The team was younger in this run, so Cyclops was only in his teen years. But even so, he was leading this team. He would disagree with Xavier often, even going so far as to join the Brotherhood at one point. Scott can squash beef for the greater good. He allows Wolverine back in the crew even though he previously tried to kill Scott. But he did end up with Jean Grey. It only took him a few years to get the courage to admit his feelings. Now, after his time as headmaster, Scott had a substance abuse problem. He was addicted to this drug called Banshee, so Jean had to help him through that one. Now, when Magneto's ultimatum wave hit New York and wiped out Scott's friends and teammates, he himself executed Magneto. But these wars don't end, so naturally Magneto's speedy son Quicksilver came and got payback using the same bullet that took the life of his sister, the Scarlet Witch.
Coming in at number 10 is Dark Claw. So, what happens if you take Logan Howlett and Bruce Wayne and just mash them up together? You subtract Robbins, add some Canada, carry the two, and you'll find you get Logan Wayne. This awesome character is from the Amalgam universe of Earth 9602. Obviously, Bruce Wayne has no actual powers of his own unless you count his undeniable skill, so most of the abilities belonging to Logan Wayne come from his Wolverine half. A massively powerful regenerative healing factor, slowed aging, superhuman senses, plus his healing factor and adamantium skeleton allow him to have a degree of super strength. But thanks to his Wayne half of things, Darkclaw is a master detective and master of martial arts, stealth, acrobatics, and intimidation. After he witnessed the passing of his parents, Logan went to live with his uncle up in Alberta, Canada, who then also lost his life to poachers. So yes, this is still as dark as both Bruce and Logan's backstories. He then went to kick it with some nuns and then joined up with the Canadian Air Force. Now after this, at some point, he joined the Weapon X program and learned of his mutation and gained his claws alongside his incredibly dangerous rival, Creed H. Quinn, who would become a saber-toothed Joker hybrid named Hyena. Logan Wayne would go back to New Gotham City, where he decided to avenge his parents' and uncle's deaths by donning the costume and name of Darkclaw.
Number 9. Sideburns. When Galactica, the daughter of Galactus, is looking for her next meal in issue 1 of her self-titled comic, she finds Earth, a lovely little morsel of a planet teeming with scrumptious life. But while looking at her dinner, she happens to notice Wolverine, a mutant who can seemingly regenerate from anything. I mean, there's also Deadpool, but whatever. Realizing his mutant regenerative abilities, she formulates an idea of using a bit of his harvested DNA with a bit of celestial power to create Sideburns, the regenerating planet. A planet-sized Wolverine that would grow back after each meal, giving the World Devourer billions and billions of years of meals. Unfortunately, she just as quickly realizes that a planet made up of Canadian mutant DNA like this, prone to drinking beer over anything else, and with predilection to being feral, would be highly unstable. Unfortunate, because I'd love to see this guy floating around through the galaxy. Number 8. House of M Wolverine. Now, to be clear, technically this version of Wolverine is just regular old 616 Wolverine, since unlike other characters in this Scarlet Witch created reality, Wolverine retains all of his old memories, which gives him a distinct advantage in this world. But outside of his story-serving memories, before he regains those memories, this Wolverine was a member of Magneto's Red Guard, which saw him have additional training as a SHIELD operative, adding extra skill to a character who is hard to even scratch on a villain's best day. Also, in this reality, Logan has himself a little relationship with Mystique, unlike his alternates who seem to always be pining after Jean Grey. Is this an advantage over regular Wolverine? Depends on your taste. Number 7. Vampire Wolverine. In What If number 24, thanks to his healing factor, Wolverine is actually immune to being turned into a vampire from just a regular old bite, which allows him to be the best one suited to bring down the threat of vampires themselves. But when he finally takes down Dracula, he actually decides to have a little snack on the dead vampire, which does turn the mutant into not just a vampire, but the new Vampire King. The fact that Vampire Wolverine is a vampire means that his strength and speed are enhanced to vampiric levels. On top of that, he has an evil personality that is fueled by the character's desire to drain the blood of the living. Now couple that with his already somewhat feral personality, his healing factor, adamantium skeleton, and the vampire trait of immortality, and he is very dangerous compared to the usual Wolverine. Number 6. Ultimate Wolverine. I'm gonna be honest, this version of Wolverine is a bit alarming in terms of his morals and preferences, and just his behavior in general is just a bit less heroic than his 616 counterpart. But despite that, it is hard not to admit that he is quite the powerful character. His healing factor is a bit different than his prime version and is called a survival factor. That means he can survive being torn in half, departed from his head, and even blown up by a nuclear explosion. He can also detect lies and still has an adamantium skeleton. He was trained by Weapon X as an emotionless assassin, but when the Brotherhood hired him to take out Xavier, he proves he is more than just muscle, overcoming his brainwashing and joining the X-Men. Although, it may have only been just because he fell in love with the teenage Jean Grey when he was like 30 years old, which is a little uncomfortable.
Number 5. Jean Grey Earth 7642. This alternate version of Jean comes to us from a Marvel and DC crossover universe assigned the number Earth 7642. In fact, after her initial appearance, Jean from this universe would also appear in stories pertaining to her past in a crossover with the Wildcats, who were over at Image at the time. So just all the crossovers really. In this reality, Jean does become the Dark Phoenix, wipes out a star, and then takes her own life, much like in the main continuity version of the story. But instead of that not being the real Jean and learning that she was actually alive but hidden underwater, in this universe, Jean is resurrected by Darkseid, who intends to use her in his pursuit of the anti-life equation. The Teen Titans and the X-Men team up to defeat Darkseid and Jean, who then recovers her memory of her life before she was Dark Phoenix and turns on Darkseid, once more sacrificing herself to save everyone else. Ain't that just the way? Number 4. Apocalypse. In Age of Apocalypse, in the reality of Earth 295, Jean ends up eventually taking on the mantle of Apocalypse. While she perished in this reality shortly after that happened, it's basically because she sacrificed herself in order to protect other people. As I said, that always happens. Jean Grey was so powerful as Apocalypse that she even managed to hold on to her own personality, but she could feel that influence of her new role working to change her, as she expressed that she did feel intensely arrogant, which might also be why she was cool going out the way that she did in the end, because Because, you know, I feel like Jean wouldn't want to be fully taken over by that force. Number 3, God Level Phoenix. This version of Jean comes to us from one of the short stories featured in X-Men Millennial Visions 2000. In the story by the maker, we learn that Jean is one of the few to survive both Deathbird and Magneto's attack. Unable to stand against them as they are, the X-Men turn to a device Forge created to evolve them further, giving them basically godlike abilities, or raising their abilities to become godlike, perhaps I should say. Jean, as her power-up, gains full and complete control over the Phoenix, making her more powerful than ever before. Definitely not a hero you'd want to go up against, though I honestly wouldn't want to go up against Rogue either in this reality, who you just need to be within a mile of to have your powers and life energy drained, which sounds pretty scary, at least if she has any skin exposed. Number 2, Zorn. While she might not have gone dark or taken the powers of Apocalypse, Jean as Zorn from the alternate reality of Earth 13729 is just all around one of the most powerful Jeans in the multiverse, in my humble opinion. Her powers are like her main counterpart but improved, making her one of the strongest all-around alternates out there. Of course, even then, like most alternate versions of Jean, and even main Jean, Zorn still perished in the end. In X-Men Battle of the Atom issue number 2, we learn that Jean's powers are so great that not even she can apparently handle them, and during the all-out brawl with all the other X-Men and alternate X-Men, she overloads and ends up exploding, creating a massive explosion all around her and leaving nothing left of her own corpse except for her Zorn mask. Number 1, Phoenix/Dark Phoenix. I really wanted to make Zorn my number 1 most powerful alternate Jean, but then I remembered that technically both Phoenix and the Dark Phoenix personas we saw in the comics were not really Jean in the main continuity, which would make Phoenix an alternate as well, albeit a one who we thought at the time was the main Jean and who existed in the main continuity still, living in effect as Jean. Dark Phoenix was powerful enough to destroy a whole planet and the whole Dabari race, which I believe amounted to, I think, billions of lives lost. Later, after sacrificing herself to save everyone from her own darkness, it was revealed that Dark Phoenix wasn't really Jean, but in fact a Jean duplicate created by the Phoenix Force, which used Jean's body and mind as blueprints to create a more powerful version of her while she rested safely beneath Jamaica Bay. So Phoenix and Dark Phoenix both are Jean, but at the same time aren't, which would classify Phoenix as an alternate version technically, and definitely one of the most powerful alternates out there as such. In fact, the creation of that retcon is pretty cool because apparently that retcon had to be created because they wanted to, if they were gonna bring Jean back, make her not guilty for any of the bad stuff she did as Dark Phoenix. So they basically had to make it so that that Jean wasn't the real Jean, which is pretty wild.